This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric on 97.3 ESPN, with your host, Nick Kosko. We're taking you up to the kickoff of Rutgers football. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Nick Kosko.
All right, College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric. I'm your host, Nick Kosko, taking you up to 11:40-ish, and we'll take you right into the kickoff of Rutgers football as they take on Penn State. Final home game for the Rutgers seniors. That game kicks off at 12 noon. We'll take you up to the call with Chris Carlin, Ray Lucas, and Eric LeGrand. Got a lot on tap for today. Not a great slate of games today, if you're really looking at it. I don't like it. Nobody really likes it. You look at Syracuse-Notre Dame, and that's pretty much it. There is nothing today. I can't even say Rutgers-Penn State's a good game because I don't even want to look at that spread today. It's bad. But Syracuse-Notre Dame, that's where we'll start today. That's what we're going to talk about in this first segment. Also, stay tuned at 11:15. Tyler Donohue. He covers Penn State football and recruiting for 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Network. He will join me shortly to talk about this game today between Rutgers and Penn State, talk a little about Penn State's season, and, of course, go around the horn in the Big Ten, maybe mention a little college football playoff implications as well. So a lot going on today, and, of course, next week's the big week for college football, rivalry week, including Ohio State-Michigan, which could very well be a playoff play-in game because I would say the winner of that game is going to beat Northwestern in the Big Ten championship, without a doubt. So you look at today, you have Syracuse and Notre Dame. That's your only game today. The only game that's featuring that's a ranked matchup. And unfortunately, it's being played at Yankee Stadium. I have my own gripes with that because Notre Dame wants to wear these ridiculous, ugly-looking uniforms to say, oh, yeah, Yankees, we're proud to play Yankee Stadium. Let's wear pinstripe pants and fix our Notre Dame logo with pinstripes on the helmet. It looks awful. It really does. That's just my 2 cents on those uniforms. Notre Dame is not really a home team considering Syracuse plays, 2-3 hours from the Bronx, and Notre Dame's out in Indiana. Come on. Syracuse is the home team, but there's not really much of a market for New York City and Syracuse considering they're way upstate New York. In any event, the actual football game could actually be good today. Syracuse coming in at number 12 in the country. Notre Dame is obviously number 3. They're in the thick of the playoff race. They're still undefeated, and we know if they finish 12-0, they're gonna make the playoff. Of course, they're in independent, so they're not playing a conference title game. But if you have a 12-0 Notre Dame team, they're getting in. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Notre Dame is getting into the playoff if they win this week and next week. The College Playoff Committee is not going to keep an undefeated Notre Dame team out of the playoffs. Now, do I think a team like Michigan right below them is a little bit better now, even though Michigan's only lost to Notre Dame back in week 1? I think right now Michigan's a better football team. But if you want any chaos today before next week, because right now, I can tell you right now, you're not getting any chaos between Alabama and Clemson. I think they're both going to win out. I think Bama's going to beat Georgia anyway in the SEC title game, but at least for this week and next week, you're going to have a 12-0 Bama, a 12-0 Clemson, and Bama's at that point, I think Bama's going to lock up a playoff spot whether they lose or win the conference championship game. Clemson obviously remains to be seen if they get upset in the ACC title game, and then they wouldn't get in. So 2 spots are going to be firmly held on to for the next 2 weeks, and that's Bama and Clemson. But if you want any sort of chaos, I don't think Michigan's going to lose today either. They play Ohio State next week. That's the biggie. Michigan plays Indiana at home today. They're not losing. Michigan and Ohio State could flip-flop. Ohio State could climb back up in the rankings should they beat Michigan next week. But if you want any chaos today, you must root for the Syracuse Orange. Syracuse Orangemen are there to beat Notre Dame. They've been close with some of these teams. They're 8-2. This is a good football team. I like Dungy, their quarterback. No relation to Tony Dungy. I like their quarterback. And if you look at Syracuse, they actually did lose 2 in a row, obviously on the road to Clemson, 27-23, and they lost to Pittsburgh as well the following week. But since then, they have won 4 in a row, beat UNC by 3, pretty much handled NC State when they were ranked, dominated Wake Forest, dominated Louisville. I mean, this is a good football team, and probably rightly so. They're number 12. I mean, if they were in front of UCF, we'd have a problem, if judged by people who know my show from last week, where I'm still not a fan of UCF being low. They're 11 right now. They're undefeated. They're going to be on prime time tonight. I'm looking forward to that game as well. I'll probably give you a pick to that. By the way, that actually is the other ranked matchup today. I almost forgot about that. So, other than what you have in Syracuse and Notre Dame, you have Central Florida and Cincinnati. That's it for today. But as far as the Syracuse Notre Dame is concerned, it's tough for me to pick Syracuse in an upset, as I think Notre Dame getting Ian Book back at quarterback makes a huge difference. But again, this is going to be a battle of these 2 quarterbacks between Book and Dungy. Both teams have solid ground games as well. You got Williams on Notre Dame. He's got almost 800 yards, 10 touchdowns on the ground. And Neal for Syracuse, 700-plus yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, both these teams feature solid quarterback play and a solid ground game. You gotta like it, but because I know it's on a neutral field, and I know Notre Dame's traveling a little bit more, but they've played at Yankee Stadium before. They kind of treat it like a home game. Notre Dame probably is the better overall football team, but I can't rule out Syracuse pulling off this upset today, because they're actually really good this year, and they've pulled off upsets with worse teams. When they beat Syracuse the other year, and Syracuse beat Clemson the other year, and Clemson still got in the playoff. I think they have an opportunity today to pull off this upset. And again, if you want chaos, you need to root for Syracuse, because if you root for Syracuse today and they beat Notre Dame, then Notre Dame, not only are they going to be done, they're going to be cooked. A 1-loss Notre Dame team's not getting in. I know they're already at 10 wins, but if they're 10-1, lose to Syracuse, and I get they're 12 right now, but Notre Dame's not getting in the playoff. No way. Not with a loss today. Even if they won today, if they lost next week at USC, that's a bad loss. It's not a good USC team this year. Notre Dame with 1 loss is not getting in the playoff. So, for me, because I'm going to root for Syracuse in this game, I'm not going to hide that. I will root for them today, as I want a little chaos. I want some change up. Plus, I'm kind of rooting for, I'll give you guys a little spoiler, I'm rooting for a Alabama-Michigan national championship. I don't want to see Michigan play Bama in the first rounds. I think Michigan's the hottest team in the country right now, aside from Alabama. So if Syracuse wins today, that'll knock out Notre Dame. I think Michigan's going to win today, so they'll slide out to 3. Bama and Clemson are shoo-ins. So you're going to have Bama 1, Clemson 2, Michigan 3 next week, and then your 4th team is either going to be Georgia or Oklahoma, I would assume, if they both win. And obviously you're going to have Georgia. I know they play UMass today. That's a bad game. So they're going to win. So they will likely both win. Oklahoma has Kansas. So, yeah, I would say both teams are going to win today. So you're probably having both slide up. You'll have Bama 1, Clemson 2, Michigan 3, Georgia 4, Oklahoma 5. And then you have to see where LSU, Washington State, and West Virginia come up with. And then if Ohio State might move up a spot as well. And I'm interested to see if Notre Dame loses tonight and they're knocked out of their top 4, how far do they fall and how high? I know they're not going to make the playoff, but I'm still fascinated by them. The UCF, if they win tonight, they would beat the 24th ranked Cincinnati Bearcats. How high are they going to go up at now 10-0 with 2 games to play? And one's going to be their conference championship game. And it stinks for UCF considering they missed the game. I believe that one was suspended for them earlier in the year due to weather. But again, chaos has to ensue if Syracuse wins tonight. Stuff's going to go down. I think Notre Dame's done. They'll fall far enough where they'll be 7 or 8 if they lose, most likely. It's going to be fascinating if they lose to Syracuse. How high does Syracuse go? How far does Notre Dame fall if everybody else wins behind them? Do they fall below a 2-loss LSU team? I don't know. That's a fascinating discussion for next week. But again, so as far as my Syracuse Notre Dame preview here, got to go with Syracuse for the chaos. I'll reveal my pick later. I'm inclined to pick Notre Dame, but I'll give you a final decision later in the show. All right, we'll take a quick break. On the other side, Tyler Donohue is going to join me covering Penn State football and recruiting. Don't go away. Got some good conversation coming up with Tyler right here on the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show, powered by Calvi Electric, right here at 97.3 ESPN.
This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric on 97.3 ESPN.
Back here on the College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric. Nick Kosko with you. Pleased to be joined now by Tyler Donohue. He covers Penn State football and recruiting for Lions 24/7 and CBS Sports. Kind of to join me this morning. Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem at all. Let's just jump right into it. Obviously, Penn State, they play again this week against Rutgers, and we lead into Rutgers, so it kind of coincides right here. But just to start on Penn State first, basically this team is run by Trace McSorley. There's no Saquon Barkley to rely on this year. So when you look at this offense for Penn State, I know they've struggled a bit at some points this season, but they're still putting together a solid season at 7-3. What has this Penn State team done differently this year, knowing that Trace McSorley is the guy and he's been number one, and there's no Saquon Barkley this season?
Right. Well, I think they've done a nice job replacing Saquon as a rusher. Miles Sanders, who was a five-star recruit a few years ago, has stepped in as a junior. He's over 1,000 yards now. He's averaging more than 6 yards per carry. He's going to be an issue for Rutgers this afternoon. And I think additionally with Trace, something to monitor this week as it has been for the last few weeks, he's got a right knee issue right now. We're not too sure what the exact details are with that injury, but it's something that happened on October 27th against Iowa, impacted him greatly against Michigan in a big loss on the road. And then last week, although they did get a nice win against Wisconsin, McSorley's mobility wasn't really there. They did a nice job in the passing game. Miles Sanders, who I mentioned, went for almost 160 yards rushing to take some heat off of him. But McSorley's not 100% right now. However, with this game, another stat for him in the program record book at Penn State, he would become the first starting quarterback in Penn State history to win 29 career games. So he'll have a chance to hit 30 the following week if they beat Rutgers in his final home game against Maryland. So one of the greats for Penn State, and a guy that may have been lost in the spotlight with Saquon Barkley. He's getting his time to shine now, and he's not to full health, but he is the real deal. And without him, this Penn State team probably takes a major step back in 2018.
So when you look at that, obviously with no Saquon Barkley, and he was a special talent, there's no two ways about it. So with McSorley, considering they're 7-3 this year, they've had some rough losses this season. They're kind of out of the playoff picture at this point. They can't even make the Big Ten championship this year. Has this year been disappointed, or did Penn State fans and media outlets kind of expect this a little bit of a drop-off, considering there is no more Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, that's been the topic of conversation now tail end of the regular season. Was this season a success? Was it a disappointment? And I think hopes were higher. I think certainly when you thought about how this Penn State season could play out, you thought maybe approaching Thanksgiving, the college football playoff would still be on the table, at least an appearance in the Big Ten championship game, where Penn State went surprisingly in 2016 and won the whole thing. But for them to be 7-3, the losses have been pretty tough. Michigan State and Ohio State, both game-winning drives in the closing moments at Beaver Stadium. And those points came by 4 points and 1 point, respectively. And I think this team is better than it was then, particularly on defense. And I think where you look at why this season probably is not a failure is their defense has gotten a lot better over the course of this season. They've been able to implement a bunch of freshmen on offense, including their starting tight end and the starting wide receiver, both of whom I think are going to be in line for big games against Rutgers. So they've been able to do that with guys who are going to be back next year. It's a young defense. They had to replace a lot of spots. It's a relatively young supporting cast around Trace McSorley. The offensive line is experienced, but the skill players, a lot of them are in their first college season. So I would say it wasn't a failure. Even if they do fail to go and finish with 2 or 1 losses like a lot of people had hoped for, I still think if they can finish 10-3 this year, you got to view it as a success, because that means they will have beaten a really quality bowl opponent, whoever they face at the end of the regular season, probably a ranked team, maybe out of the SEC, and that will be the first time since 1980 to 82 in which Penn State has won at least 10 games in 3 straight seasons. So, their trajectory is still pointing up.
So let's talk about this game against Rutgers today. Obviously, both teams are trending in very opposite directions. Rutgers was seen to be improving after 16 and 17, considering they went from 2 to 4 wins. But in Chris Ash's third year, it has not gone as anyone has sort of playing, including myself, having covered the team. the past few years while a student up at Rutgers. So where Rutgers is now, they're very young. They're probably even younger than last year. Very light senior class, but everything has just gone against them this season. From at least the Penn State perspective, what have you seen that has gone wrong for Rutgers? I know a big part of it is recruiting, but in your eyes, what has Rutgers done wrong this year in order to take these huge steps back after winning 2 and then 4 games? And a lot of people were thinking this team might actually win 5 to 6 games and maybe sneak into a bowl game here in 2018.
Yeah, no, I think, I'm also a Rutgers alumni, and I spent 3 years with the Rutgers football program, under Craig Schiano. So I keep a tight eye on Rutgers to this day. And even though I'm out in central Pennsylvania, I will say I thought a bowl appearance was a possibility for the team based on what they built last year, getting those few Big Ten wins that they really needed. And, I think what's been most disturbing to me about this Rutgers season is really, although the conference play has been rough, what happened outside of the conference earlier this year was baffling to me. Kansas, don't get anyone confused. Kansas is considered one of the worst Power 5 football programs in the recent stretch of years, and they really took it to Rutgers in a big way. And then Buffalo, not in the Power 5. Those are games you got to take care of business. You're going to get those games on your home turf, and Buffalo came into Piscataway and again really took it to the Scarlet Knights. And now you're in, deep into the Big Ten season, and you're saying, is this team going to fail to win a conference game for the second time in 3 years? And what does that say about Chris Ash and his program? It tells you that you don't see the market improvements on the football field. To me, this is a team that has played hard. I think they put up a lot of fight against Wisconsin, Michigan early on. Northwestern, a team that's going to be in the Big Ten title game. They were on the ropes against the Scarlet Knights team. I'm not saying they haven't been competitive, but they don't have the depth. For them to have to, the primary example is for them to have to rely on a true freshman in Artur Sikowski. He's a guy that I got to watch in high school, and the potential is there, but he's always been more on the raw side, if you ask me. He's a guy that I think he would really benefit from, at least a year or two on a sideline, learning from a more experienced quarterback that you can rely on. But right now, I think with the talent level at a lot of positions, including quarterback, they have a sense of urgency that they got to get the best guy out there. So I think that's a big separating factor, between Penn State and Rutgers and a lot of schools that are just more competitive right now. Second guy, third guy on the depth chart oftentimes is going to be a better option, than what Rutgers is putting out there for a first-teamer. In a lot of cases, that's just because these guys haven't had a chance to get seasoned on the sideline. They've kind of been thrust into duty, and that's what Rutgers has really had to do consistently.
So we know this game is pretty much a foregone conclusion. Penn State a very heavy favorite, and I would expect Penn State to go out and win this football game. But you mentioned Northwestern, who Rutgers actually somehow was competitive with, and Northwestern somehow is in the Big Ten championship. I mean, did anybody really see this coming? I know Pat Fitzgerald has made that program a pretty competitive one, a very tough Northwestern football team, but I don't think anybody really expected them to get into the Big Ten championship over a team like Wisconsin this season.
No, I mean, it's no surprise that the Big Ten West is going to be lackluster compared to the Big Ten East, where Michigan and Michigan State, Penn State, and Ohio State are all going to be front and center. But I think there was a lot of expectation for Wisconsin to be the team again. They were unbeaten in the regular season last year. They brought back, the South Jersey native and Jonathan Taylor, one of the best running backs in the country. They brought back their quarterback, a bunch of All-American linemen and All-American linebacker. And here Wisconsin is at 6-4 through 10 games. I watched them in person last Saturday at Penn State, and they looked like a 6-4, 5-5 kind of team, quite frankly. So that opened the door for somebody, and I don't think after the first month of the season, considering the losses they accrued outside the conference, folks would have expected Northwestern. But a lot of respect across the Big Ten for their coaching staff, starting with Fitzgerald, and it'll be interesting. They're going to be the heavy underdog against whoever they end up facing in the conference championship game, whether it's Michigan or whether it's Ohio State, and they're going to be potentially that last stepping stone that someone needs to get into the college football playoffs. So I'd imagine across the Big Ten, across the country, there will be a lot of folks rooting for Northwestern to pull off an upset.
And I mean that would be fascinating should they do that. So let's talk about Ohio State and Michigan real quick. They play next week, but I know this game is basically the play-in for the Big Ten championship coming out of the East, but it seems like Michigan has a better shot at the playoff. I'm looking at Ohio State, even a one-loss Ohio State team, because they're ranked at 10th right now. Do you think that loss to Purdue on the road is actually a big hamper on their playoff aspirations?
It has to be. I mean, at this stage of the season, with only 4 teams getting into the playoff at this point, that difference between number 4 and number 5 so often is the loss. And, with Ohio State getting pummeled by Purdue on the road, it doesn't matter where that game was played, it's a bad loss. And Purdue hasn't exactly, carried that momentum over. They've lost since then. So it's not like the Boilermakers look like some world beater at this point. Michigan, I think they got to be a lock for the playoff if they roll through the regular season and get into that Big Ten championship game and win it, because their one loss will be at Notre Dame, opening week of the season. That's a long time ago. This team's playing very well. I know Rutgers fans got a firsthand look at them last week. I went out to the Big House for the Penn State-Michigan matchup a couple weeks ago, and there's so much about their defense and running the ball 40 to 50 times a game. I think because of what they do well and because of the steady hand of their quarterback, Shea Patterson, I would give them a chance to potentially make it a game against the Clemson or in Alabama. I think they would lose either of those contests, but I think Ohio State in that situation gets lumped up pretty bad. It'll be interesting, though. You got to acknowledge on the other side of this whole spectrum, you got the SEC and Georgia and Alabama on a collision course. Georgia has one loss. Alabama is on B. And what happens if Georgia beats Alabama in that conference championship game in the SEC? Are you keeping either of those teams out? I think that's hard to do, and that could impact what we see come out of the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's actually funny you mentioned that, because I kind of look at the college football playoff, and I'll leave you here with this one. You look at Alabama and Clemson. I think they're both teams. I can't see Clemson losing, and neither I can't see Alabama losing either. But I feel like they are still going to get in, even with one loss, because I think that one loss would only be to Georgia. So then you're looking at Bama, Clemson, and then you have two spots for 3 teams: Notre Dame, Michigan, and Georgia. I mean, how do you see this playing out in a couple weeks?
Yeah, it's hard to, Georgia's the one team I could see beating Clemson or Alabama. I don't see that from Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Michigan, Washington State even on the outskirts there. And I do think if it comes down again to Clemson and Alabama, I think it's another good one. I think it's going to be a lot like the first 2 we saw. I think Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback, the true freshman for Clemson, is really starting to show people what he's all about. There's a reason he was a high-level high school recruit dating back to his freshman year, 14 years old. But I do think Alabama is just simply too deep in too many phases of the game. So, if Alabama loses a game this year, I'll be surprised. And even if they do lose a game, lose to Georgia, it would still surprise me then if they didn't go on to win the national championship game. But we'll see. College football has been full of surprises lately. But it's been Nick Saban's universe here for the past 10, 12 years.
He is Tyler Donohue. He covers Penn State football and recruiting headlines 24/7 and CBS Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at TDSTake. That's at TDSTAKE. Tyler, really appreciate you joining me this morning, and it's great to have you back on the South Jersey airwaves. As it's been quite a while since you've been around here.
It's been too long, and it's a pleasure to be back on. A lot of love for the area, a lot of love for the people there, and a lot of love for 97.3, of course. So thanks for having me, Nick.
Appreciate it, Tyler. Have a good one.
All right, take care.
All right, that was Tyler Donohue. Once again, covers Penn State football and recruiting headlines 24/7 and CBS Sports. Follow him on Twitter at TDSTake. We'll take a quick break. On the other side, got some picks coming around right here on the College Football Countdown to Kickoff, presented by Calvi Electric. Don't go away on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show, powered by Calvi Electric on 97.3 ESPN.
Welcome back to the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show, powered by Calvi Electric. I was just telling Josh that he's still here. Obviously, he's always here. When is he never here? I'm always here, and that's when he's always here, unless I fill in for him. But I was just telling him, I'm talking about Rutgers. Obviously, we're going to lead up to them in a few minutes. They're going to be taking on Penn State today at noon. Also, thanks to Tyler Donohue for joining me, as I'm sure he might have his game story written already that Penn State thwarted Rutgers today. It'll be an easy day for him. But I was just telling Josh, if you're Rutgers and if you're Pat Hobbs, the AD, how do you stick with Chris Ash after next year? I mean, he's not going to get fired. He's not going to get fired after this year, even with one win. The buyout is too big for this program to take another financial hit. So you have to keep him this year. And for next season, okay, you're going to have Sikowski. It'll be his second year. The second year with John McNulty, you might make a change in defensive coordinator. I don't know if Jay Neem is going to come back. I really don't. I think that's a big question mark. but you'll have a year or two with this offense. Try to grow. Maybe you'll get some better lineman prospects. You'll develop some linemen, get some of these guys bigger and stronger, have some better depth along the offensive defensive lines. That's their biggest flaw. Maybe these skill guys finally develop, or at least be a little more competent in the wide receiver as wide receivers, tight ends. You're gonna have a better year probably out of Isaiah Pacheco next year from Vineland, South Jersey Star. I mean, he's been a godsend at running back this year for Rutgers, one of the only bright spots. Blackshear will be back, so you're gonna have two solid running backs. And again, Sikowski in year number 2. But if you can't win 5-6 games next year, and I don't think they can as of right now, no way. But if you can't do that next year, if you're Pat Hobbs, how do you stick with Chris Ash? You can't. I think after next year, it's justified that you could fire him. So they play UMass at home August 31st next year. If they lose to UMass, like how they lost to Kansas and Buffalo this year, you might as well fire them after week 1. All right, they're going to beat UMass. If they don't beat UMass, you might. I will not pay attention to football next year at all. Sign me up for wrestling in September. Expand the basketball and wrestling seasons at Rutgers if Rutgers should lose to UMass in football next year. So they'll play UMass. They should beat them. They're at Iowa. I can't see them winning at Iowa. They're going to host Boston College. Toss-up because it's at home, but Boston College is kind of good. They're decent. At Michigan, it's a loss. So we're already at 1-3. Maryland is somehow always a toss-up. That's in Piscataway. I'll throw them a bone. Let's say they win that. Let's say they somehow win that game. They're 2-3 after 5 games. At Indiana, that's no gimme. Let's say 2-4. Minnesota at home. Minnesota is better than Rutgers at the moment. Let's say 2-5. Liberty. The Liberty Flames, who just became an FBS program again the other year, are coming to Piscataway on October 26th next year. If you lose to Liberty or UMass next year, Ash should be fired on the spot. They should beat Liberty. All right, let's give them 3-5 at Illinois, 3-6, and then Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State. I'm looking at 3-9 next year. They should beat UMass and Liberty, and maybe steal one against Maryland. And who knows? I mean, Illinois is not that good either. They could always, quote unquote, steal that one. That could be a trap game for Illinois for all we could say. I can imagine. But I'm looking at 3 wins right now off the top. 3 wins. If you can't win more than 3 games next year, he needs to be done. Gone. Goodbye. Thanks for your service. We're going to clean house. Promote John McNulty to head coach. Hate to say it, but he seems more like a head coach for this football team, or what they need, than what Chris Ash is right now. Because that offense has been dreadful. The defense can improve in some spots and then give up big plays, but that offense has been dreadful for years. All right, quickly, picks for the day. Like I said before, there's not too many good games today. I'll start with Syracuse-Notre Dame. That's the big one. It's at 2:30. I am going to pick Notre Dame to win today. I would love to pick Syracuse. I'm going to root for Syracuse, as I mentioned before, but I just cannot pick against Notre Dame today. Ian Book's back at quarterback. That's a huge help. Syracuse has a knack for pulling off these upsets, but I just feel like for some reason, I know it's a neutral field and it's at Yankee Stadium, so it's closer to Syracuse than it is to Notre Dame, but I feel like just Notre Dame is a really good football team this year. They are undefeated for a reason. I am going to pick Notre Dame. Who knows? Maybe they get upset by USC on the road next week. But I'm going to go with Notre Dame today. They're a 10.5-point favorite. I would take Syracuse plus 10.5, by the way, for doing against the spread. But I'll pick Notre Dame to win today. West Virginia and Oklahoma State, interesting game. West Virginia is number 9. They're on the road. Oklahoma State only 5-5, unranked. But if West Virginia has any shot to get to the Big 12 championship, they can't drop this game. They drop this game, they absolutely have no more shot. They have no shot for the playoff. If they want to keep their slim playoff hopes alive, got to win today. I think they will win on the road, so give me West Virginia, the favorite, on the road. And then tonight, UCF, number 11, hosting number 24, Cincinnati. 9-0 UCF, 9-1 Cincinnati. Give me Central Florida. I love this program. I think it's more impressive that they are undefeated this year without Scott Frost and Mackenzie Milton not playing as well as he did last year. Give me UCF at home tonight in primetime. College game days there as well, so I got to love that. And then, obviously, I'm going to pick Penn State over Rutgers today. Those are my 4 games today. Rutgers, I hope I can pick more wins next season. It's just not happening this year, unfortunately. Good thing they're on the road next week at Michigan State, so I don't have to suffer through. The fans don't have to suffer in Piscataway again to another blowout loss to Michigan State. That's going to be at 4 o'clock, by the way, following Ohio State, Michigan. All right, that's going to do it for me. Thanks to Tyler Donohue once again. Follow him on Twitter at TD's Take. 97.3 ESPN alumni right there. Giving some great insight on Penn State and, of course, going around the horn on the Big Ten. You can catch me for my final college football show next week at 11. We'll lead you up into Ohio State and Michigan. Then, of course, Rutgers, Michigan State will follow. That'll do it for me. Stay tuned. Chris Carlin, Ray Lucas, Eric LeGrand coming up for Rutgers to take on Penn State at noon. I'm Nick Kosko. So long. 97.3 ESPN.